everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ben Talks About, where we reach the halfway point in our anime movie trilogy series on this channel with the 1995 sci-fi classic Ghost in the Shell. Now, this movie has been reviewed and discussed on several channels. It's probably one of the most popular anime films of all time, and pioneered a lot of science fiction elements that we would see in films like the Matrix trilogy. So it's safe to say that this film has been quite influential. But as a person who has only seen it very recently, and being in the era where technology has advanced very much to this point, how does a current generation person interpret this film? Well, I definitely gotta say, without really giving away much spoilers, right off the bat, I do like this movie a lot. I think it's really good, but it's definitely not a film for everyone. This is a type of movie that I would classify as a study film. A film that has several elements to it that have certain meanings to it that are meant to be discussed with several other fans of the movie, in a round table discussion. Think of it sort of like the type of plot elements you could see in stuff like the Metal Gear Solid series. But despite that, I'm going to try and talk about this film with a very, as I guess you could say, base sort of opinion. So let's start out with talking about the basis for the story of this film. It takes place in this world where almost everyone has some sort of cybernetic enhancement to them. And some people are even created from scratch as, I guess you could say, androids of the sort. With one of the many enhancements being what is called a cyberbrain, which is essentially this casing inside someone's brain that allows them to access stuff such as the internet and a bunch of other type of networks. And while that sounds convenient, this also leads to a lot of problems, as there is a hacker in this movie, only referred to as the puppet master, who is able to hack into people's cyber brains and essentially control them, which could lead to things like robbery to stuff like terrorist attacks. So a group called Section 9 is given the task of trying to stop them. So it's a rather simple sort of premise. Now, like Princess Mononoke, which is the film that I reviewed previously, or talked about previously, as I want to say, the highlight, I feel, are without a doubt the characters. And I feel like characters in this sort of setting are much more important, because while the previous film was based on something that was in the past, and we had a sort of an idea on how people would react in that era, this is taking place in a time that we don't even know about. But still, the characters are all, some of the characters are unique in their own way, and it definitely shows when they're interacting with each other. Now, of course, the main protagonist in the film, while she does have an actual name, most people just refer to her as the Major, or just Major, so I'm just going to call her that. She pretty much of course serves as the main protagonist of the film. She has the most focus, and she sort of serves as the exposition dump for the film, as she pretty much not only tells the people around her, but also the viewer on things such as what they know about the puppet master during the beginning of the movie, or how these new cybernetic humans work. and she's also seen throughout a majority of the film contemplating on, herself, whether or not she can really even be considered human, and all that kind of stuff, which gives the film a bit of ideas that the kind of things that make you think. Now, the second character that I would like to talk about is the character Bato, who is the Major's partner, and as a result they interact with each other the most. Now, he serves the purpose of being a more down-to-earth kind of character compared to our main protagonist, and he sort of acts as a father figure to her, as he almost always talking to her about the fact that she shouldn't be questioning who the kind of person she is or what she is, like she's seen throughout the film, and other people treat her like she's just a human, so she should simply leave it to that. But later on in the film, he begins to realize that there's nothing really that he can do that will stop her from wanting any sort of answers. So I think at least that's what I thought, and how I interpreted the character as I was watching the film. Now, the next character I want to talk about, who is probably the most interesting character to me, is Togasa, who is a character who was drafted from the regular police force into Section 9, and he's the only character who is probably the most human, you could say, in terms of his design. He doesn't have nearly as many cyber enhancements compared to the other two, and I feel like that could lead to like a few interesting ideas, and could lead to a couple of questions, like how does a regular human react in this world where many of the people around him are almost all robotic. And surprisingly, it's not as overly played out as I probably thought it would, because he kind of treats them as he would anyone else, and I think that's really what makes him unique. He knows what his job is, and he pretty much goes throughout his job as if nothing really changed. Despite how interesting I find his character in terms of concept, out of the three, I feel like he has the least amount of focus, but he does indeed have his moments, like when near the beginning of the movie, where he asks the Major why he was recruited from the police force to here, as well as near the end of the movie, where he helps figure out the location of the puppet master. Now, while I did say that the characters were rather interesting, I really meant, in terms of the heroes, I really meant those three. As the other side characters, mainly the other members of Section 9, such as the chief of the group, all the other background members, and the political figures that we see throughout the film, who seem like they should serve a bit more of a purpose, I feel like aren't as focused on compared to our main trio, which I guess sort of makes sense since the film is only about, I want to say, either 82 or 86 minutes long. But despite that, even characters like the main antagonist, the Puppet Master, they become a rather interesting character with a rather interesting sort of motivation for doing what they do. They only really come to, the first time they actually speak is around the third half of the film, and he only really interacts with two of the characters. One, which is the the chief of Section 9 and our main protagonist, the Major herself, near the end of the movie. And the fact that they were able to make his character interesting, or their character interesting, with only a few lines and scenes to go with, I feel like they could have done a bit of a better job giving the side characters a bit more room to overall develop, I think. Maybe if the film was increased to about maybe an hour 45 minutes, or maybe even 2 hours, maybe that's a little bit stretching it, but I feel like increasing the time would allow these characters to have a bit more focus and be able to flesh out more. Now, of course, one of the major things about the film that everyone really likes to talk about are its themes and messages that it tries to get us to understand throughout the movie. And there is quite a lot of it in the film. The imagery of that gives us information on how different these cybernetic humans are compared to regular humans, how the idea that maybe some of the things that the puppet master does can correlate to some of the things that the creators of these cybernetic humans do as well, how they could be rather similar, and several other things about the film that are pretty much there for the sake of being analyzed. And I feel like that's one of the things that could sort of detriment this movie. The fact that it's one of those films that you definitely want to spend time and think about. It's kind of like, again, I correlate it to Metal Gear Solid. The fact that, you know, the games are mostly dialogue and getting an idea of what certain things mean. If you know, skip all that and just go right to the action, you're left with only a small amount of stuff to work with, and you're sort of missing the half of the entire point of the game. I feel like Ghost in the Shell also has a bit of that problem. It does have a lot of great action and some very, very good animation, which really makes this world come to life, but there's also that other layer of mystery and themes throughout the film that you only really get from analyzing it yourself. So if you're not of the analyzing type, this film might not be the best one for you. I sort of felt that way when I first watched the movie, and as a result, I didn't really like it as much as other people probably did. But when I watched it the second time and actually tried to think about certain things and how I interpret it, I definitely had a lot more fun watching it. So, yeah, all I gotta say now is that this is definitely a good film, but again, it's not a film for everybody. So, if you're interested, make sure to proceed with a little bit of caution. And that's pretty much it. I hope you all enjoyed me talking about this film. I enjoyed talking about it to all of you, and finally we've reached we're about to reach our final stop in our anime movie trilogy series. I say finally, but the series is only 3 videos long. But yeah, join me next time where we look at what can pretty much be summed up as Acid Trip the movie with a whole bunch of motorcycles. Until next time, I'm Benjamin Contreras, and